Perfect. So we'll go on to our movie reviews of the week. We've got a few. I think we'll start off with obviously Poor Things. I didn't get a chance to see it. Well, didn't get a chance because it's not out. I think it releases here like the 13th of January. So not crazy bad like usual, but it's still annoying because I did want to watch it this year because I'll probably end up doing like a 2023 ranking at the end of the year when I won't be able to include it, and everyone will be like, "Oh, I have to go through that again," which is great.
Dude, I started like writing down just in my notes app like all of like my end of year videos I want to do. Like I did the worst movies yesterday. Today I think it's like mad stressful. There's like a lot of things I want to talk about.
I'm saving mine for January 1st at this point because I have so much I want to catch up on.
I'm doing mine
Seth,
all
on the bright side
week.
for our draft that we'll probably do like on Real Quick in a couple weeks where we do most anticipated for 2024. Poor Things. You can pull a Babylon and draft that in the draft.
Yeah, but am I anticipating it that much though?
Oh, I thought you were excited for it, but either way, you can. I can text you when we're done, just if you want to be completely removed from like and don't want any spoilers or anything spoiler or anything. But
yeah, well, bye. See you later. Have fun.
Shouldn't be too long. George, Poor Things. You saw it at the New York Film Festival, right?
Yeah,
not a separate early screening.
No, Film Festival second, I believe. Because December was the opening night film, and then I believe Poor Things was number 2. So second film with a film festival. Definitely one of my favorites of the film festival. I think I have it at number 2 right now, behind Hitman, the Linklater flick. And again, one of my more anticipated of the year. I still haven't seen The Favorite, which I like fucking hate to admit because I love just Yorgos directing Emma. I think it's a match made in heaven, especially in Poor Things. So I need to continue that little relationship there. But no, I think this was brilliant. This sits just inside my top 10. I think I know in my Letterboxd review, I referred to this as an ode to creativity. And I think that's pretty much exactly what this is. I think Yorgos is playing with so much in this movie that you just don't see a lot of filmmakers like handle. And he's also just giving us a really thematically rich screenplay while also just having the best time of his life behind the camera. It's really, I know you said in your Letterboxd review, it's very sexual filmmaking. It's about sexual liberation, religious liberation. There's a lot to process when you're watching Poor Things, and I think there's just a lot to love from this movie. Freedom, identity, power. Obviously, we refer to Willem Dafoe's character as God, so I know you touched a lot on religion in your Letterboxd review, and I'm sure you'll touch on it again here, but that is more so, I'm not going to say at the forefront, because I do think the sexual liberation and that aspect of this film is more so in the forefront, but religion is right there with it, like you said. But yeah, like I said, I think Yorgos is he's utilizing a lot of camera work techniques, color schemes, editing decisions that we've never seen him play around with, but we've also never seen other filmmakers play around with. And while doing so, he's giving us this screenplay. Emma's giving us this incredible performance. Mark Ruffalo, who I'm a slight hater of, I think he is number 2 on the Best Supporting Actor list this year, behind RDJ. There's just a lot coming together in this film that just make it such a unique and just wacky experience. And I say wacky in a very good way. It was very funny, the movie. It was also very insightful, very important, I think, in terms of this year's filmography. I think this sits, closer to the top of the list of just important films that I think a lot of people need to see, because like I said, we're touching on growth, sexual liberation, freedom, identity, religion, which again, I'm sure you'll touch on more. But yeah, this sits just inside my top 10. I believe it's number, where's my Letterboxd? It's my number 9 right now, and just looking at my top 8, I could see it going up a few spots on rewatch, so I would like to rewatch it before the end of the year if I have the chance. But yeah, I thought this was great. This is one of the better experiences of mine at the film festival. It was obviously one of my more anticipated films of the year. Emma is still my number 1 on the list of best actresses. I know a lot of people have Lily Gladstone at the top. I know a lot of people are pulling for Sandra Hüller, who I think was also fantastic in Anatomy of a Fall. But I think Emma just took her name and put it in the stratosphere with the all-time greats after this movie. Not that she wasn't there already. I think she was, personally. I think she's been one of the best actresses of the last decade or so. But I think this one just elevated her to the heights of a Cate Blanchett or something. And maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but that's how much I adore Emma and her in this role.
Yeah, I mean, Emma Stone is phenomenal in this. It's crazy that just looking back and scrolling through Netflix and just seeing other Emma Stone movies from yesteryear of like, you know, like House Bunny of the world, and like
she has
like
a
super
wild
bad.
filmography.
Like, it's like she went from being such a like, you know, being in just like kind of
Easy
comedies,
Crazy Stupid Love,
right? Just nothing crazy, nothing great, but like always good, but never like great films. I mean, some of those like Crazy Stupid Love, I really enjoyed. Superbad's one of the greats, but I mean, in terms of when you're talking about like filmmaking, like they're not going to be like, you know, the super experimental, the super, you know, Oscar worthy type movies. Whereas Poor Things and The Favorite, like the movies she's starting to get into now, La La Land, like she's really starting to dive into being like one of the elite tier actresses in Hollywood. I love her in this, and I think Lily Gladstone is great this year. But the thing like is like with her, I think her performance is so good for like what it was. But this year we just had so many actresses who like transformed. Like Emma Stone transformed for this. Kaylee Spaney, I think, transformed for Priscilla. So like Lily Gladstone for me might be like my top 5 still, but she's not top 3. I don't think for me right now.
She's my number 5.
Yeah. Like I think she's still gonna be my top 5, but I don't really have her like as like an elite contender for winning. But I think Emma Stone is so good in this. Like she really runs the gambit of not only just being such a, you know, bizarre performance, but she goes from starting, you know, as basically an infant where she's can barely walk, is completely uncoordinated, can't say any words. She slowly starts to learn language, slowly starts to become more coordinated until the very end. She's basically walking completely normal, completely coordinated, and fully fluent in proper language and well educated. And you just see her really transform slowly throughout this movie, and it's really incredible to see. So her performance is amazing. I am a Mark Ruffalo hater. I do think he was really, really good in this. We'll save it for the spoiler talk, but my favorite supporting actor in this still was Christopher Abbott. He's not in it as much as Mark Ruffalo, but good God.
Great.
And like this movie, like you touched on, is just so heavy on just like sexual independence, religious liberation, spiritual exploration. Like there's a lot of stuff on the surface that's so obvious that it's a religious film in terms of, you know, Willem Dafoe's character is named Dr. Godwin Baxter, but he goes by God. And then the first kind of thing that Emma Stone does in his house that grants her pleasure is an apple. So I was like, okay, those are like very obviously like religious. But it wasn't until I got home when I started just like, I was like, I'm just going to Google some of the names of people in the cast and just see like if there's other connections here. So I Googled like Wedderburn, like the last name of Mark Ruffalo's character, who kind of comes and takes her away from Willem Dafoe. And it's like, oh, okay. So Robert Wedderburn was this notable preacher in the late 1700s who fought for social reform and abolition of slavery in Britain. And like Emma Stone is basically, Willem Dafoe kept her in the house, was like, you're not allowed to leave. And, you know, basically said, you're going to do exactly what I say, live with me forever. The guy, I can't remember his name in the movie, who wants to marry her initially, is like, yeah, you can marry her, but like you guys have to live here forever and like never leave. So she's basically a prisoner. And Wedderburn's the guy who kind of fights for her abolition, takes her away. There's other stuff like Margaret Qualley's character Felicity is the name of a biblical slave. A lamb is an important symbol in this film, which is both suffering and triumphant. So there's just a lot of connections that I started to simply just like Googling just like the name and then religion. Like in Google, I just got like so many connections. So I was like, okay. So it wasn't anything like when I was watching it, I made all these connections other than like the God thing and the apple. But very quickly, I just went down this rabbit hole. I was like, okay, this is all starting to really start to come together here. I think Yorgos Lanthimos is just such a cohesive film in terms of his vision. I love like the use of fisheye lenses in terms of like, it makes us really feel like we're watching, you know, like a fish, like we're watching this experiment where they're, you know, we're kind of on the outside, the creator, the viewer of this experiment, and we're just simply watching things unfold. The production design was crazy. So much of it was practically done. The colors are so beautiful. Like when she's looking over the city in Lisbon, when they're on the boat to Greece, so many of the shots of the sky or the smoke or the fog from the steam engine, everything just had such crazy visual colors. I honestly wish there was more of it, because I feel like every time we got it, it was such a beautiful splash. I'm like, oh man, that's just like so great. And it just looked so, this film looked incredible. It starts in black and white and then becomes in color when she kind of becomes freed. So very tied to kind of not only her liberation, but also, she's young and can barely speak and barely move. Things are black and white. And then, she's opened up to a whole new world of color and starts learning things. Yeah, that's kind of all I'll go and do for the non-spoiler part, but it's definitely a movie that I was really interested to see what people in my theater thought, because like I was with a generally older crowd, and I think in general people liked it, but I don't know if obviously it's a very graphic film in terms of like there's a lot of nudity and sex in it, and I don't know, I feel like sometimes older audiences might not love that, but I didn't really get a vibe of people hating it. No one walked out or anything, and I feel like if you were the type to get offended by this, there's a lot of opportunities where you could have just walked out, and no one did. So it's like, okay, I think we might be okay here. But really enjoyed it. Comedic gothic drama. It's at my number 10 of the year. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And yeah, I guess I'll throw up the spoiler tags and kind of like open up our discussion a bit. But yeah, where would you like to start on spoilers?
I don't know. I mean, this isn't a movie I would like necessarily care to spoil, just because one, I know our UK audience hasn't really seen it yet, so I want them to go in as blind as possible. But also, there's not a lot of like story beats here that like I think we touched on. I think the important parts of this movie are in its themes and in its messaging, which we kind of touched on. I don't think there's anything necessary, unless you want to go into anything spoilery.
Not super deep, but I guess I would say like first off the bat, a lot of people are going to be, this is a movie that had a lot of buzz before it came out, where people were like, oh my God, like Emma Stone, there's like a 20-minute sex scene, which probably all combined throughout every sex scene in the movie. It's probably like, yeah, that's probably about accurate.
Yeah.
But just, I guess, kind of like laying the groundwork for what those are. So and I guess it's not really spoilers, but I guess I'll talk about the plot a little more deeply without worrying about like revealing too much. But film starts with her as an experiment where she basically was a woman named Victoria who threw herself off a bridge and killed herself when she was pregnant. When we later find out she was married to a man with the last name Blessington. I don't have his first name, but also I just feel like choosing the name Blessington for the last name, I was just like, there's just too much here that have to be religious, like religious backgrounds here. But she kills herself. Willem Dafoe finds her. He's kind of this
experimentalist.
Yeah, experimentalist, university. It seems like he's like a professor at some university, or at least he does like public exhibitions of what he's doing for his surgeries. He takes the baby out of Emma Stone. She's already dead at this point. Victoria is. She takes the baby out and takes the brain from the baby, puts it in Emma Stone's head. So the baby is sacrificed, recreates Victoria to become alive again. He takes her in as his daughter, names her Bella Baxter. And that's kind of why she starts off as this, infant mentally. Like she literally has no words she can speak. She's learning about like 10 to 15 words a day. She can't walk. She can't catch things thrown at her. She has no coordination whatsoever. And the main, the whole first third of this movie is her gaining the ability to walk, gaining the ability to talk, getting that cognition level in her brain up. And as she's doing this, Willem Dafoe takes on like a student of his to be like a live-in, basically observer. Like his job is just to fully observe and take notes on everything Emma Stone is doing throughout this, Bella Baxter's doing throughout this. I'm trying to find out what that dude's name is, like in the movie. Max, maybe? I don't know. I think maybe his name is Maxwell or Max, but
Max McCandless.
Yeah, perfect. And he starts to grow an infatuation for Emma Stone. He becomes attracted to her and he wants to marry her. And Willem Dafoe's like, sounds good, but you have to stay here forever. But we got to get this signed off by a lawyer. That's where Mark Ruffalo's character comes in, Duncan Wedderburn, I think. And he's like, I got to see this woman who's being kept in her room and like has to have such a strong legal contract to make sure she never leaves. Goes up to see her. He's like, damn, dude, she's fine. And then he's like, I'm gonna take you away from here. We're escaping you. You're coming with me. We're gonna go on an adventure. You can't be cooped up in here forever. And that's kind of when the whole movie sets in motion. He takes her to Lisbon. They go to Greece. They go to maybe Paris. Probably another stop along the way, but they really just go throughout, Europe traveling. And at this point, mentally, she's getting to the point where she's already, when she was at home, like I said in the non-spoiler part with the apple, she's experiencing sexual pleasure at this point. So she's probably like just raging hormones around, probably like mentally, probably like late teen, early adult age at this point. So she's experiencing sex for the first time. She just wants everything Wedderburn has to offer and more. She has no quit in her. She just wants to go, go, go. So that's where you get a lot of the initial nudity is from them, Mark Ruffalo, just hairy ass shot. You get a nice hairy ass shot of Mark Ruffalo. But he was just fully committed. And one thing we talked about last week, and I don't know if you saw this on Twitter, where like people were like would joke on set that Mark Ruffalo was going to be replaced by Oscar Isaac in the cast.
I saw that.
I mean, Oscar Isaac would, I'm sure, be great, but I feel like he is too good. Like Mark Ruffalo is a good looking guy, don't get me wrong, but I feel like he's like the perfect level of good looking for this role. Whereas like Oscar Isaac would have been too like suave and good looking,
too clean. Yeah.
Whereas like Ruffalo kind of had to be a little bit of a loser, at the same time, or like pathetic. And I don't think Oscar Isaac could really be that pathetic because he's just like too like,
he's too cool.
I don't know. He's just too like epic looking. Like you wouldn't turn down him. Whereas Mark Ruffalo with his little hairy self, you can kind of be like, he's a little pathetic. But yeah, they just travel the world having sex and experiencing new things. And then kind of ultimately, I'm not just going to go through the entire plot, but then like just going over like the nudity parts. Then later in the film, she becomes, when she leaves Wedderburn, because she's kind of like, you know what, I've only tasted you as like one flavor in my life. I'm not really interested in that anymore. And he just started to get too controlling, too aggressive with her. And she needed money. She was on her own. So she joins a brothel and becomes a prostitute. And then you get just montages of just like a ton of different men just going in there and having sex with her. So that's kind of where most of the nudity from the movie comes in. But I mean, it's one of those things that like, it's either going to bother you or it's not. I think it's a very hard line in terms of people are either like put off by nudity or they aren't. And I feel like I don't know, like I don't really have an issue with it. I mean, at some points I was like, this is getting a little much in terms of just like, I don't really need to keep seeing all these like dudes going to town on Emma Stone, but like I didn't actually like care enough to like ever make it like sour my opinion of the movie. But yeah, I don't know. Did you ever think it was too much?
No, I don't know. The brothel scene, I was trying to like gauge like my theater's experience when that scene was kind of going on, because we were like the first batch of people to have seen it.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't seem to bother a lot of people. And I'm honestly surprised how, I don't know about you, maybe I'm on just the wrong side of TikTok and movie Twitter, but I have not seen any like discourse around just the amount of nudity in this movie. Like it's like surprised. Like I saw more discourse around Oppenheimer's nudity, and there was
true.
Just like compared to Poor Things, Oppenheimer was a PG movie. But no, it was never off-putting. Especially because I think this movie is just so rich in its themes and its screenplay was so strong that everything just it made sense. It felt warranted. It didn't feel like Yorgos was like, okay, let me just toss in this 25-minute sex scene of various men going to town on Emma Stone just for the fuck of it. It felt, I guess, rewarding. It felt warranted, and it felt needed in this movie to progress the plot and the character of Bella Baxter forward. So it never bothered me. Nudity in general in movies doesn't really bother me, and then I guess if it doesn't bother me in Poor Things, where maybe at times a lot of people will say it could have been excessive, then I don't know. I don't think it's going to bother me in general. I think it was fine and I guess tasteful. Maybe I don't think that's the right word, given that she was in a brothel, but just the fact that it was warranted in the screenplay just makes it appropriate.
Yeah, for sure. And the entire supporting cast was just so good in this movie. It is such a well cast movie because I mean, obviously Emma Stone's the star here, and Mark Ruffalo is probably the clear number 2 in terms of like screen time and stuff to do, and then Willem Dafoe probably in there at 3. But then you get these minor supporting roles of like Catherine Hunter as the brothel runner was just so great. On the boat when they're going to Greece. Didn't love Jared Carmichael, honestly, but I'm going to reserve that for maybe just like his whole point was he's such a rigid philosophy. There. He was supposed to be like the guy who's like very much clear cut, right or wrong, dry, drab, no real fun. So I maybe that was the kind of like the point of his character to be super stiff. But like Christopher Abbott at the end being Victoria's original husband that she committed suicide to get away from. I thought he was so great. It just immediately you realize he's just like this controlling asshole that just wants to absolutely just take over her life once again.
Margaret Qualley coming in as like the new Bella Baxter was fucking hilarious.
I wish we got more of her. Like maybe not actually because of the
too.
screenplay, but like just because Margaret Qualley is so great, and I feel like she could have been.
Every time I see Margaret Qualley, I swear, in my head, I think, okay, this is going to be like a breakout role. And then she always just takes like such a crazy back seat. Like she's like, and I know she had like a much larger role in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but like she's good enough to like either support a movie or even lead a movie. And like she was so underused in this movie.
Yeah, I would have loved to see a little more of her, but the only part in the brothel scene that was like off-putting was when the father was like
teaching his sons.
Yeah, that was wild.
That was the weird part. But
yeah.
I mean, what year was it supposed to take place in? Obviously,
that's the thing. You don't really know. Like you don't
know.
It also could be future. Like it's kind of just this alternate world, or science fiction world, because there's a lot of things that happen science-wise that's going on that you might think would be futuristic, but a lot of the settings could be past.
There's like flying cars.
Right, exactly.
So but then they're dressing the way they dress.
Yeah, it's just this alternate science fiction, alternate reality, which was really cool. But I think visually this movie was incredible. The production design was hitting on all beats. Yeah. And then the final ending with the lamb I thought was hilarious. And just the entire movie I had a really good time with. Never was like, I was always in love with the technical aspects, like the costume design, the production design were always incredible. And I was always in awe of Emma Stone's performance, but I was never like in love with the movie as it was unfolding. Like I was never like, oh, this is like amazing. Like I'm really enjoying this, but I never like disliked it. So it's like a 4-star for me from a production aspect. Everything was incredible. But yeah, I don't know. It wasn't like a movie where I was like, this is like something I can't wait to rewatch. Like this is going to be a new favorite of mine. But it's definitely like one of the best movies of the year in terms of like a cohesive vision put forward. Gonna be really interested to see where the Oscars go. I know we're like super early in award season to the point where like nothing's really like locked in yet. I don't really like. I know Emma Stone's getting the most buzz, but what else?
I think this is locked in for picture, director, actress.
For nominations. Yeah,
nominations, not wins. I think Ruffalo is locked in for supporting actor. I think Defoe is questionable because as of right now, the Golden Globes were 6 nominations. Same with the Critics' Choice Awards, and Defoe has been sliding his way in, but I think he's going to be like the 6th one for the Oscars, so he'll, I think, get bumped out. And then I would not be surprised, and I'm going to warn all my Oppenheimer stands right now, this could clean up like the tech categories when it comes to like production design, costume design, sound design, score. I think this is going to give Oppenheimer a run for its money in a lot of the tech categories. So a lot of people are saying Oppenheimer, best case scenario, could be this year's Mad Max Fury Road or this year's 1917. I wouldn't be surprised if between the tech categories we see even like a nice little 3-way split between Poor Things, Oppenheimer, and Flower Moon.
Yeah, and what's interesting is Flower Moon, Oppenheimer, and Poor Things were all adapted screenplays. They're all based off books. So yeah, it's going to be a really contentious category. So it should be fun. Yeah. But you gave it a 4-star, right? I'm going to text Seth and say
I gave it a 4-star. Again, it's one of those that like I'm just looking at my 2022 ranked list right now. It's one of those movies that I'd love to rewatch. Like I'd love to rewatch The Holdovers one more time before I like officially set my ranking for the year. I'd love to rewatch Poor Things before I officially set my ranking of the year. If I can get to a theater and watch Godzilla once more, there's a lot. Basically, I'm saying my top 10 outside of like my top 2 are so interchangeable that like I'd like to rewatch all of them, because if I rewatched all 10 movies in my top 10, my ranking could look completely different. So
right.
I'd like to do that in the next like week before I like officially drop my top 10. Well, I'm going to do top 20 actually, my top 20 movies of 2023.